to today's video. Today is Thursday, March 27th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Elise Stefanik, representative from the state of New York, who was nominated to be Donald Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. Now, the reason why we're talking about her today, she is a representative, and yes, she could be a UN ambassador, someone who serves as the official member of the Trump administration, but the White House today seemingly is considering withdrawing her United Nations ambassadorship bid to the U.S. Senate, which would remove her from her office in the House of Representatives. And a big reason why the White House seems to be considering removing her ambassador nomination is because they are fearful about the slim majority that currently exists in the U.S. House of Representatives. In the 2024 election, if we take a look at the results here, the Democratic Party won 215 seats, the Republicans 220. The thing about the House of Representatives is that there are 435 voting members, but 218 are needed for a majority. Those 218 very often come back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. The majority flips roughly every 4 years, and Republicans are worried that in the midst of these special elections and the changes that are happening on the national level in relation to how Donald Trump is being approved of, from being approved of by 12 to being down 2 points, a 14-point difference in just around 2 months, they're worried about Elise Stefanik's district. Now, to give you a bit of context about Elise Stefanik being in the House of Representatives, she comes from the 21st District of New York. She won that election by 24 points, outperforming Donald Trump by a margin of roughly 3 percentage points. Donald Trump won the 21st District by 21 points. But Democrats never really thought of Elise Stefanik's district as one that could be winnable, or even one that could be narrowed down. A 21-point victory for Donald Trump is something that seems to be insurmountable for a national party that has only been given roughly 2.5 months to organize against him. But a victory in Pennsylvania this past year really rang through the heads of the Democrats, not last year, last week, in the state of Pennsylvania, not even the last week, on Tuesday. I'm getting way too far ahead of myself. 2 days ago, Democrats won in the Pennsylvania 36th Senate District. Now, why are we analyzing a state Senate district? Well, the Associated Press calls it GOP leaning. I call it safe Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump won the district by 15 percentage points. Yes, you heard that correctly, 15 percentage points, and yet somehow a Democrat is winning this seat. So now more things are being thrown on the radar. It isn't just the Pennsylvania State Senate District that could be won, that 15-point district. It's House districts. It's states. It's Senate races. It's all of these things that Democrats thought were being limited because of how large Donald Trump's victory was before. We're now getting back into how Democrats started to feel with their moral victories in 2017, with their substantive victories in 2018. And so now the White House is feeling it too. Should they lose the election for Elise Stefanik, assuming the vacancies are filled this year, which they will be filled, they have to be filled this year, by the end of the year, Democrats could be just 2 seats away from the speakership. 2 seats away from the majority, from Hakeem Jeffries being the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. And given the average age of a congressional member, retirements are very, very common. I don't imagine many more special elections will pop up, but in 2017 we had 5. In 2018 we had a similar amount. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that sometimes people say, I'm bowing out, I'm leaving early, right? There's 435 members of Congress, many of which will say, I'm either going to retire this time, right? We saw roughly 1/10 of the House retired in 2018, primarily Republicans. But also, there are people out there who could say, on the GOP side, I'm leaving, or get nominated. Let's say we see some turnover in the White House. The range of secretaries that we saw turnover in 2017 was vast and far. And what that meant was there were vacancies that needed to be filled. So people like Elise Stefanik, and I'm sure many other very loyal Trump House members, might be gunning for those nominations. Will guarantee the president, my district won't flip if I'm gone. Nothing will happen to it until it does. I think what the White House might be worried about right now is a combination of two things. The very practical, realistic point of it is that if Elise Stefanik leaves the House, there is no doubt in my mind that special election, although will happen, will be one that will be occupying a lot of money from the GOP and one less vote that Republicans will have in the House. Republicans need every single vote because of their slim majority. If someone's out, they're down a vote. They only have 3 over the Democrats. 3 over the Democrats. That matters. So if Elise Stefanik's out, you're down 1. Now you're just up 2. On top of that, there is a second part of it. The Republicans might be worried that after this result in Pennsylvania, and with the Democrats getting a lot more lead time on campaigning and advocating for their race in the 21st district, the Democrats might actually win it. And you might be thinking, no, this doesn't sound right. There's no way the Democrats win a district. Trump won by 21 points. Elise Stefanik won that race very solidly. But let's go back to a state, just the same one we were talking about, Pennsylvania in 2016. Why am I showing you this? In 2016, we saw the Republicans win very strongly in Pennsylvania. This was an unconstitutional gerrymander, according to the state. They ended up redrawing the districts ahead of 2018, and it was much more balanced. It was a state Trump won by 1. There was no reason that the Republicans should have been winning 13 out of the 18 total seats here. But that's not the point. The point is the 18th congressional district here in the bottom left of the corner that Democrats didn't even field a candidate. Do you know how crazy that is, that there is a party out there, a mainstream party and one of the most powerful political state parties in the nation, Pennsylvania Democrats? They did not even run a candidate. They didn't run anyone. In 14, guess what? They didn't run anyone either. The last time it was contested was in 2012, but what happened? The Republican won by 27.9. So then you ask, why didn't Democrats run anyone? Well, because the race was deemed unwinnable. Mitt Romney was winning the district in a state that Obama was winning by 6 points, by 28 points. The Republican in the House was winning it undefeated in 14 and 16 because no one dared to run. Trump won the district by over 20 points. But then Democrats won it. They won it in a special election because we saw the Republican resigned. Things happen, right? People commit fraud or do whatever they want to do, and they decide to resign. They leave the office early. Republicans weren't worried. This race was never meant to be competitive. Donald Trump had won the state by a very significant amount, the district by a very significant amount, but it became a toss-up, much closer to, too. Donald Trump was really into this race, too. Rick Saccone was this, big thing for the Trump administration. He was going to win this special election that Democrats were getting surprisingly close to winning. But there was no real expectation the Democrats were going to win it. And then they did. Conor Lamb, you might remember him, ran in the special election, ended up running for Senate, ended up losing that Senate primary. But still, the 18th congressional district is something that the Trump administration saw as a warning sign for what would come in 2018. And the election came. Republicans went from 241 seats to just 200. Democrats gained 40 seats across the entire country. 40 seats. Remember where we are right now. Democrats need just 3 for the majority. Democrats won 40 in 2018. But the early sign came in Pennsylvania. But let's say we looked a little bit further back at least. 2017 is a good example. What happened? There were a bunch of special elections that were largely deemed moral victories for Democrats. Ron Estes had a very competitive race against James Thompson. This was a race that in 16, if you look at the 4th district, went to the Republicans by 30 points. 30 points narrowed down to 8. When it came down to Montana's at-large district in 2016, the Republicans won this race by 16 points. Well, in 2017, what happened? The Republicans won it by 5. In 2016, Republicans won the Georgia 6th district here. You might remember John Ossoff, now a senator from the state, by 22 points. In 2017, they won it by 3. Then in South Carolina's 5th district, a race that Republicans won, again, and I know we keep doing this, but it's important to note, by over 20 points, the same district, less than half a year later, or roughly over half a year later. The Republicans won by 3. Why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you this? Because it matters on every level. These moral victories led into actual victories. The victories came in the fact that Democrats were able to gain 10, 15, 20 points on the GOP in these congressional districts. But as we got closer to the 2018 midterms, Democrats started winning. And they won a race that Republicans had won by over 20 points in the past. Didn't even field a candidate, the Democrats, in this race. So with Elise Stefanik and her district now on the line, Democrats are starting to look at the 21st as an opportunity for a pickup, and Republicans are feeling it too. They're feeling that if Elise Stefanik gets this nomination, that if she is the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, she leaves the House of Representatives, and Republicans will have a House vacancy that Democrats might actually be able to flip. because this isn't the first time that it's happened, I think Republicans had expected that because Stefanik was coming in so early, this was one of the first decisions made too, might I add. This was a week after Trump was elected, not even in office, not even in the final days leading up to the inauguration. This was a week after Trump was elected. She was one of the first people he mentioned. Why? Because she's been a huge fan of Trump in his re-election twice, 2020 and 2024, and been big on his team, big on bringing back in the GOP and supporting him. Elise Stefanik, who used to, be the representative of the old guard of the GOP, switched to Trump and really tapped and honed into it, and now is a darling of the Republican Party. Trump adores her, but he doesn't adore losing. And he doesn't adore losing in a congressional district that should have never even been competitive in the first place. But what's happening in Pennsylvania and what's happening across the country in other special elections, Fox News noted that this victory for the Democrats marks 5 consistent, meaning back-to-back overperformances for the Democratic Party in special elections since Trump took office. Improvements that can be marked from anywhere from a point to 20 points, taking over Trump districts, winning back seats you lost. Democrats now have the majority in the Pennsylvania State House, outperforming a district Harris won by 15 by winning it by 30 points, going to take the race from 101 to 101 to giving the Democrats the advantage in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. It is really so interesting to see this happen and play out in real time, but I've never seen to the extent that they are considering withdrawing a nomination for someone who has been so particularly loyal to Trump since the 2020 election, has been so involved in his inner working circle, been very adamant that he should be president of the United States through, and Donald Trump reciprocates. This isn't the case of Nikki Haley speaking at the RNC or Chris Christie endorsing him in 2016. This is different. This is someone who Donald Trump very much wanted to, in a way, play kingmaker, brought her up to replace Liz Cheney as the chairwoman of the Republican Congressional Caucus, right? Made her the Republican Party's shining star in the House of Reps. She was even on the short list to be vice president in the beginning of the VP stakes back in 2024. And so to see now that the electoral implications are taking precedent shows that, one, this White House is aware that Donald Trump's agenda and Donald Trump's administration is dipping in terms of public approval. The president doesn't just get these things and say, we're going to ignore it. They know. The question is, do they care? This administration doesn't seem to think that they do care in terms of how it makes Donald Trump's approval rating feel. But they do care about governing. And they know this majority is much slimmer than the one they had in 2016. Republicans had 241 to 194, right? It wasn't about any defections that would have made a difference. When you're talking about the United States Senate, a bit better for Republicans now than it was then, but it was still roughly the same, and the filibuster was never going to do as much, and it can't do anything to people like Elise Stefanik when you're trying to confirm cabinet picks. And so that makes a difference. But it is the governing aspect that I think they care about. It is the ability to pass legislation, and I think they know that when headlines like these come out, it only hurts Donald Trump's agenda. It makes Donald Trump look bad. When the approval rating dips, right, it makes everything that the GOP is trying to work for, which is more victories in 26, a J.D. Vance presidency in 28, you clearly start to see these things pan out. That while maybe Donald Trump and his inner circle doesn't care about how it impacts him necessarily, because they're never going to think the media covers him fairly, election results come out. And Republicans are continuously doing worse and worse and worse, election after election after election. We talked about it earlier this morning, how the races in Wisconsin and across the state are going to make a difference. Not a state, across the country. Florida special elections, these races next Tuesday. What they're going to tell us is that if there's an improvement for Democrats in any of the districts, that matters for Democrats, right? If Democrats win the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, they've locked down the congressional redistricting battle and the state legislative battle for quite some time. It makes a difference. Democrats know this, and so do Republicans. And so I'd be very interested to see if this withdrawing of the nomination comes through. It's very much that Elise Stefanik seems like she really wants this, really has wanted it for quite some time, and it was all but assured until today. We see that there might be a withdrawing of her ambassador nomination, which can make a huge difference. One, in the dynamics that Elise Stefanik plays in relation to the White House. She'd no longer be someone who'd be a spokesperson for the White House or the Trump administration, but rather just Republican conference chair. And also, too, what it says about the GOP's worry for House races and their possibility of losing them in 2026 and beyond. Because if they're worried 2 months into the administration I don't want to be there 24 months into the administration thinking about it around this time in 2 years, after Democrats just won back the House of Representatives, and now they're looking ahead about how they springboard J.D. Vance into the nomination. It's going to be a lot of questions and concerns about electability, especially if we're at this point just 2 months in. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.